Hi, so shall I start? Yeah, hello. Nice to meet you. I would like to start this lecture by talking about the piece performed yesterday, Satellites, for trio a canto, then my most recent piece, Intrusions, for orchestra and electronics. But probably more useful would be through these pieces to speak about the issues that may concern all new music composers. I don't know if you are all new music composers. New music. What is new music? Well, but what and for whom we write a music, a fundamental and vital question for all of us, I think. So recently, the lectures are often filmed, like now. So, and open to the public later. So you can't speak about the same pieces repeatedly. So I'm a bit embarrassed because I have already told about Intrusions another place. But at least the Satellite from last night, I have never talked about it, at least in English. So it must be a good occasion. So basically the act of composing the music, for me, is a way to reflect and a trial to understand the world. So many of my compositions are inspired by extra musical elements, often scientific, matters like clones or chimeras, brains, water cycles, AI, universe, and sometimes social aspects like violence, and of course Japanese culture, etc., etc. And my interest is not to describe them by music, but to try to understand their mechanisms, incorporating or translating them into the musical system. So as an example, I will present you later the most recent orchestra piece. But to start, the piece Satellites from last night was conceived a bit differently because I struggled much to find out the idea that triggers the music and that fits with the instrumentation of the trio. But time flies and deadline arrives. So one day, Nick Hodges, the pianist from the trio, told me that it would probably be better not to think about blending these three instruments together, but rather to treat each instrument separately. And that was really a clue for the piece, because his advice reminded me of Gagaku or gamelan ensemble that I experienced when I was a university student in Tokyo. The Western style of music often has common beats or tempo, and the whole ensemble follows it. In Gagaku or gamelan ensemble, each instrument have independent system of beats or tempo. There's not really an organized vertical meeting point shared by all the instruments. So in this music, according to my experience, there's no general score. Each part have each piece of paper or by oral instruction explaining some combination of rhythmic or melodic patterns to be repeated periodically. So this system made me think about the planet's rotation. Each instrument or planet has different period and speed to go independently, but it relates vaguely to other planets or instruments' behavior. So it might have been a way to learn and understand a universal system through physical experiences, not only by a brain knowledge. So anyway, I decided to organize the piece in a similar way. So the piece doesn't have a general score, only the part score exists. I show you the I'm very old-fashioned composer. It's written by hand, like this. Yeah, so this is a piano part because it starts by piano, and there is A, B, or something like that, to be repeated many times, and something like that. This is piano score, and for percussion to join at some point when after around 1 minute after piano starts. So everything is written, but the timing and the speed is quite free. Well, quite free. It's written, but it can be changed. And then saxophone, no, not yet. The saxophone part to join at last. It's written in a strange way, maybe. You have an option. Yeah, so each part is written in a different tempo and system, and I wanted each instrument to play recognizably different music. So at the beginning, the piano starts the music with some rapid dodecaphonic sound to be repeated. Then at a certain point, the percussion joins with some rhythm patterns that I show you. And finally, the saxophone joins with a detuned melody, also made by a combination of some phrase patterns to be repeated in a kind of controlled improvisation. Like this. Sometimes the saxophone part has a choice, and if you choose one, then you go here, for example, and if you choose two, then you go there, something like that. So it's controlled, but you can choose as you like each time, different way. And sometimes it can be really short, and sometimes it can be long, so it changes all the time. It doesn't change the general image of the piece, but each time the performance is different, and I wanted to create some kind of involving live performance, once in a lifetime experience or something like that. So like this, these three instruments but have some distance or autonomy, and the musicians can be dispatched as well, as they did last night, but it's not asked by me, it's not written disposition, it's totally free, but they do what they like. Why not? So the piece was written before or during the beginning of the COVID apparition. So, but by coincidence, it can fit with social distancing situation. So, yeah, I think most of people listened to the concert yesterday, but maybe I can play it a bit up. Where is it? it may not sound particularly like Japanese gagaku music or gamelan, but it is influenced by its structure. And I have some more pieces influenced by Japanese culture, but none of them really sounds enough like Japanese music, apparently. That is probably why I used to be often asked about my identity as Japanese. Actually, it isn't so difficult to write something sounds like Japanese, I think. But I am much more interested by the spirit of Japanese culture. For example, how to coexist different things together peacefully, rather than the sound appearance. When I was younger, I was much more interested in timbre, how the music sounds. But now, unless it's a reflection of certain philosophy or some visions, it doesn't really excite me that much anymore. But I understand the attraction of sound exotism. I remember when I participated in a seminar, composition seminar in my youth over 30 years ago. Georgia Ligeti told a young composer from Cuba why she doesn't write a Havanese music. And I also would have been interested in listening to Havanese string quartet than a universal contemporary music. So it's not a question of discrimination, but an expectation for something incredibly amazing. And there a question rises up if we should write something expected. And I will come back later to this question. And meanwhile, I present you another piece, my most recent piece, Intrusions for Orchestra and Electronics. I have already told about this piece at Manifest in Paris, for example, in last June, as it was premiered there. And the conference was filmed, so I am a bit embarrassed. And sorry for those who have already heard the same story, if by chance they are here. So, intrusions. Wait. Up. So Intrusions is for orchestra and electronics. The 10 minutes first part was presented at the centenary of the Donaueschingen Festival last autumn with a request to write something about our future. And the complete version of 18 minutes was premiered in Paris last June. I have written several pieces inspired by the function of the brain over the past few years, and I am particularly interested in its functions in relation to others. The brain learns through repetition and imitation of any external information. And during this learning process, a form of sociability, close to compassion, is established to understand the difference between oneself and the other. The brain then seeks to minimize this gap through an interplay between prediction and realizations. This is the starting point of the piece, of the first part of the piece. From the beginning, various different elements appear as others. I show the example. It's quite easy to see. So, For example, at the beginning of the piece in the orchestra, the cowbell and tubular bell show the repeated notes with equal and uneven rhythms. And later some winds join with the same pitch as imitation, and other winds with slightly different pitches, then repeated notes in uneven rhythms, also as an imitation. Then jumping pitches. Next page. Jumping pitch like this. Jumping pitches with equal rhythms appear as a new stranger who imitates what has already existed, because even rhythm was already there. Then the pre-recorded animals and birds are introduced as symbols of more different others, and each element transforms their characteristics by imitating the other's elements and incorporating them into their own. In this way, they create new sounds, one after another. And for this process, my computer sound designer, Robin Mayer, used audio guide or Orchidea, among others. So, for example, this is Alouette, lark, and transcription of lark. Yeah, something like that. So I'm staying in lark. This is same lark sound, but analyzed and orchestrated by Orchidea for 2 flutes. Something like that. And the same process for orchestra. Something like that. So you may know that Orchidea is the software made by IRCAM. So this processing, inside of this processing, we hear the IRCAM sound. Don't you? And so I found it interesting because I didn't really care about it, but even using the software, you can put some characteristics of the maker of software. So I found it interesting. What else? So through this process, kind of mock orchestra and artificial animal sounds are produced because of imitation. And I realized that the composition has become, in a way, a matter of elaborating an essentially unified trinity of orchestra, robotic animal, and clone. And later, so the second part of the piece, I added some other elements related to the spontaneous development of the brain, like dreams or imagination based on external information and memories. And for that, we tried DC2, DYCI2, and rave, RAVE. I don't even know the original word for this abbreviation. It's apparently a variational autoencoder for fast and high-quality neural audio synthesis. That doesn't give the abbreviation rave, but anyway, some deep learning system. So as the piece was scheduled to be performed in Hamburg as well, so I took some sounds related to the Hamburg venue as others, like the sea, the whales, the harbor, and the big fires that burned repeatedly the most of the church St. Michaelis, where the piece was performed, and made these sounds analyze and sync through the deep learning system using rave. For example, this is the fire sound. This sound came from the sound bank, simply. And then this sound to rave to sing. Then we let computer to reanalyze these songs and made the orchestra play them, which is this, I something like that. Also, I forgot to speak about like a mixture of the sound of, for example, I showed you this gap and even rhythm pattern mixed with some animal things. Something like that, or finally, I think it becomes a quite strange music. The piece also questions the link between man and machine in its relation to the limit. Some parts by the AI orchestration are almost impossible to play, hectic with lots of notes with wide intervals. So sometimes the orchestra loses the control and the mock orchestra takes over the real orchestra. So I started this composition with my own idea, but ended up with something beyond my control as well. And I don't really know what it is. It's, for me, a quite strange piece, but probably it shows our future living with AI. So I play the piece. to stop a bit because I want to speak about one thing. This part is written for flutes, right? Piccolo, actually. But what you hear is the mock orchestra. It's from what you heard earlier from the computer. And I noticed some interesting thing. It's quite hard to play this thing. So this was, as I showed you, Orchidea proposition. And it's quite hard for flutists to play. And so they didn't play at first. So we put just for demonstration the sound of computer. And then we noticed that the flutist made proof. They progressed. So we were happy about it. But actually we noticed that they didn't play at all. And it was only the computer sound. And once they noticed that even though they don't play it, but they hear something, okay, computer plays perfectly, so they don't play at all. So that made me think about maybe our future. And also, of course, as I said, the orchestra part is quite hard to play. So some musicians complain about it. But when I said, okay, if this is really hard to play, then string player can play 1 octave lower. And then immediately they played 1 octave lower. And then, of course, it doesn't give anymore the bird sound. So I had to give up about this and asked to play 1 octave higher. But of course, computer doesn't complain about it, and they play perfectly. And well, string sounds quite bizarre with computer, but flutes or brass instruments are quite good with computer sound. So yes, so it gave me some thoughts to thinking about the future. So yeah, I don't know if I play whole piece. It's quite long, but I can continue a bit more. Yeah, it's the end of the first part, and the second part starts, but maybe I stop here. So it's strange, isn't it? Long time I thought I was trying to write good music, but good or interesting music is just subjective, and I don't find this piece good, but at least because of its strangeness to me, it made me reflect and realize about many unknown things for me. And once the new music had to show something new, technically or philosophically, acoustically, ideologically, aesthetically, in many sense. And it has been stimulating our ears and spirits, our visions, and that must be a reason why we always have to or want to renew, innovate our conventional idea to enlarge it so that we never stop developing ourselves. But to appreciate such newness, it's not always easy, and the audience's spontaneity and active attitude to listen to it is necessary. But today, we are all busy, and generally so much got used to be only emotionally drawn into the music or listen to it doing something else. Maybe you don't, but most of my students do. And all the new strangeness hardly gets into people's mind, doesn't it? So is there any sense on the music that isn't heard? Sure, there are concerts and festivals, but if they are always with the same insiders, today, of course, there are YouTube's recordings that are open to anyone, but how can people get to new music? If you don't know new music, you have no way to listen to it. Currently, I teach at 2 universities in Tokyo. One is Music University for composition masterclass students, and another one is a general university for students interested in arts but never listen to new music. For these students, when I play some new music in the class, they ask what this kind of music for, if there is a message inside, and if so, why don't composers use songs with words to be more comprehensible, etc., etc. All the questions that the insiders or experts would never ask. At least they want to understand the incomprehensible music for them. But they have no clue because there are many codified matters or historical premises. On the other hand, the history of some hundreds of years to play or listen to the classical music still gives its order or chord, like what cadences or melody lines evoke a certain emotion or understanding. And even through the popular music, it's transmitted and imprinted into us deeply. During the whole 20th century, every kind of experiment to replace this strong convention by something new was sufficiently done, and we experienced their interests and some loss. Since such a common musical chord is shared between many different cultures now, wouldn't it be more efficient or acceptable for many people to appreciate a new idea reconstructing such a long-time common heritage rather than denying it all? I think many composers have thought about it. And now, for example, at Music University where I teach, the citation of classical or pop music with the drum set rhythmic pattern is very popular. It's a kind of entertainment. Why not? But there are many entertainments everywhere, and if you want to listen to something pop, there are also many choices. Usually, all the entertainments are conceived attentively to make much money. That's why there are many tricks, including marketing matters. New music is outside of it, or even contrary. It doesn't make money, but is often supported by public money. Then what or how must it to be then? Peter Drucker, Austrian-American management consultant, said that the mission of no-profit organizations is to transform people and society. I don't know if the new music has such a power, but at least we can say that the new music is probably the only music that is still able to produce a surprise, a shock, because there's no sponsor, so no taboo. A shock can be a good way to shake our mind. What for? Probably for our development by our own reflection. So I told you earlier about the reaction of my general university class when I played the new music. But it's not a simple rejection. They want to understand what it is about. For example, when I play Stockhausen's hymn in its length of 2 hours, they get bored. But when I play a part of it, especially the part of Japanese national anthem, how it's eroded by American anthem, it's even not 1 minute length, but it speaks more eloquently than any word to students. They all took their breath away like this. And then they start thinking about the relation between the US and Japan, for example. So probably today's composers have to think, or even compose till there, a kind of accessible path to involve people into the music. So I try to do in my way for my music, but any questions or any opinions, or especially the last part that I spoke about?
I've got a really quick thought. It's a bit tangential. I've got a quick thought that's a bit tangential to what you were saying, or the questions your students were asking, like, oh, well, why doesn't like, say, new music have like words so we can better understand or like why don't we use song as a format? But correct me if I'm wrong, but you mentioned these students are kind of interested in the visual arts, right? And the amount of abstraction that goes into visual art is, like that's something that even if you're not a visual artist, you can appreciate and understand. And I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts on why that is. I know there's a book called, I think it's called like Fear of Music, Why People Love Rothko by H. Stockhausen. I haven't actually read it yet, I just know it exists. But I just wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that, like why new music seems to be kind of this little bubble, whereas other kind of experimental forms of art are more accessible to the general population.
Yeah, visual aspects has impact immediately, and that's why people tend to think that we have understood something because you see something, but the music you don't see, and it goes by. So you have to keep it in your mind. But if the new music often don't have something recognizable for usual people, and to memory about it. So that's why it's already very, very difficult. But I think because of invisible aspects of the music, that can speak much more. You can imagine many things because visual aspects sometimes, it gives some frames. But when you don't see the thing, then you can feel much more free way to imagine many things. And for example, when I play cage music without any visual aspects, actually, when I played the video, of course they are much more interested in. But afterwards, when I ask them to write some reaction paper, it's much less interesting than just listening to the music. So I think we can believe in music much more, and we can believe in our music, but I think we have to be conscious, maybe more conscious about it. I noticed that many composers, including my students, composer students, they think about what they want to do, but they don't really think about what their work to be perceived, what and how. And I think perception is important because, as I said, the music goes by and rapidly, and you can't really sometimes time or enough room to receive the music. So that's why all the music form is based on the repeating. How to repeat it, that's the form of the music. And it's classical thing, classical matter, classical order, but it's still useful, I think. And yeah, once the repeating things was prohibited almost in the 20th century music. But I think it's useful. And yeah, and also some, yeah, lots of music actually. For example, total serial music is not perceptible every moment. I think the way to compose it is interesting. The idea is interesting, to be totally autonomous, the music to be autonomous without anything to be related. It's interesting, but you don't really know what theory connects to what. Yeah, and like when you see something visual and it gives gives the impression like you have understood something, maybe, so it's just a fantasy, but maybe music, when you make music, maybe you can be more conscious about this perception, then maybe you can give more kind of understanding or the sensation of, I have understood something, or I have heard something that I recognized, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. It's always interesting to think about these things. There's also the kind of the aspects of the concert experience as a whole to consider, like, and how to, for example, things like, I guess, program notes even, like how they impact kind of our perception of a piece or a performance. And whether we consider, like, you know, music to be an absolute that has to be purely about, you know, the sonic characteristics, or whether we can, you know, do more and say more with it, not just with the musical performance, but also the experience of witnessing a piece like that. And it's really easy to think about. So thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for putting on the table all those questions and all those things that are really important to think about. I mean, the impact that our music can do in the society or listeners. So my question is, how do you perceive the impact of your music?
How I?
Do you perceive the impact of your music?
My impact, yeah, but
Of your music, like in the different agents, I mean, in your students or in, I don't know, common listeners or colleagues.
I don't know if I understood well the question. Perceive? How is it perceived? By listeners? Is that the question? Well, I don't know. Normally, when people comes to me to say something, it's normally good comments. So bad comments I don't really search. So I don't know. But especially, yeah. But really, even though I think to think about perception Of course, people are different and the experience is different. So I know that I don't think that my music is difficult, but I know that it sounds strangely to many people. But you know, you can't control their listening. But at least from my side, I try to do my best for a perception or the subject to treat, because today people are not very much interested in something that doesn't concern you. So if I stay in my own interest, I play only in my world. Why not? But I would like to create, already the new music world is very tiny. So I would like to be open as possible. So I am interested in social aspects or what is happening in the world in many sense. So I try to put it, as I said, I try to translate the mechanisms of these phenomena, matters, into my music. And of course, it's not really audible for everyone, but at least in this way, I try to make a communication. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like a challenge to combine like your own expectations and also what people can expect from your music. So.
Yeah, and I told you earlier about the question, should we write something expected? And yeah, everyone wants to be loved, so we want to write something that makes people happy. But as I said, entertainment or something to console you, something nice, emotional thing, is everywhere. And I think if you choose this way of writing the music, you must search for something else, I think. And yes, sometimes it's difficult to believe in it because it's quite lonely work. But yes, it was my husband, also composer, who said that the new music is really almost only way to make a shock, and that made me really like this, and it gave me a good hint. So yeah, if you want to write something nice and give everyone happiness, then you can search for another way. Yes, maybe it's easier. Well, but some people told me that actually it is really hard to survive with popular music because you have many contracts. Yes, and at least new music you have commission. And yeah, the popular music you don't have a commission, so you have to make money. Yeah. So many, actually, many composer friends told me that actually new music is quite a good way to survive if you are fortunate enough. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, please.
Specifically about the manifest piece.
Yeah.
With the animal sounds, what did you choose and what didn't? What did you let go of control on? What didn't you in terms of specifically the animal sounds?
Specific?
The animal sounds? How did you choose them?
By my sense, and also impact. Sound that has impact, very strong impact, because it has to be a surprise. And also, it's not very sophisticated way, but I wanted it to be very, not sophisticated, very wild way.
And when, for instance, when you did the analysis, specific notes represented specific animal sounds, the way it was?
Well, specific animal sounds to put into what it was, an audio guide or Orchidea. But Orchidea doesn't give always the result. I worked with different RIM, the computer music designer, and the result was quite different. So even using software, there is some kind of personality of computer designer as well. So it was a good and interesting experience for me. It's maybe because of segments or conditions to give. So it gives really very, very different result. So even with same segmentations and conditions or similar one, it changes all the time. So I asked him to make many, many versions, and then I choose later. Someone else? Yeah, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I was going to say, because you were saying about how the way we repeat things can be useful in sort of being a sort of pathway for people to kind of understanding music that's not so familiar to them, especially in a linear context, both in terms of the listening and having a linear beginning to end school. But what I really liked about Satellites was the fact that it kind of challenged that and the sort of non-linearity of it. And I just noticed when I was listening yesterday, it just felt like you could drift between all three parts and just kind of choose, a bit like you're sort of panning, like the volume dials on those machines. And I guess my question was how often do you engage with that in your work, and how much that has to do with thinking about the audience perception, of what you write, in terms of challenging that.
Is it a question?
Sorry?
No, sorry. It's because of acoustic. It's much better acoustic than concert hall. So, unfortunately, so the words are really, I don't really understand much.
Sorry. Well, I guess it's a short version of the question.
Sorry.
Do you tend to think about sort of non-linear ways of getting people to listen to your music often, like you did in Satellites?
No, yeah. Did you find it non-linear or?
I did, personally.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't really conscious about it by myself, but often people says that my music is quite narrative. But I know many composers work from here to there like this, and then switch them to each other. But the music you always hear from this point to one direction, so I can never really compose in that way, because I listen to my music while I'm writing, and I hear always in one direction. So maybe that's why my music sounds very linear to many people, but not to you. Good.
I just wondered if it was an interesting way of opening up the discussion of how to give people an in into music that they aren't familiar with. Because of what you said also about, you showed your students maybe 10 minutes of Stockhouse and then they got bored, but then when you showed them a specific excerpt or something, suddenly they could be interested in something that was just highlighted in a moment. And so it just made me think that I
is important as well, I think, because today's people are much get used to the zapping things, like Twitter, just the little things, and videos, YouTube. Many things are very short, short pieces of accumulation of short things. So if I show just 2 minutes or 1 minute things, then it's really strong impact. But with the recording in the class, just 1 minute or 2 minutes music works. But if you are at the concert and play just 1 minute of recording, I think it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's a question of context, and because the place is specially proposed and prepared, so people are ready to receive something, and expectation is for some length. So if it happens just 1 minute, it's a kind of deception. Yeah, so I think you have to have good context and to choose good lengths, and yeah, that's what I said. How to show your work, how to present your idea is also a part of composition. Thank you.
I'm really curious about what the gap is between getting people to be excited by a very short excerpt of something, and the journey from that to being prepared to go to listen to a 20-minute version of that in a concert hall where that's the expectation. But yeah, it's a really interesting point. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I understood the long version of Emily's question, then you said you noticed in the concert with Satellites last night that you started to listen to sometimes it's one thing, sometimes another thing, and the attention sort of
Right.
moves around, which is my experience as well. And I think that's where you're going with the linearity idea, rather than
Right.
listen to this thing, then this thing, and then these things, but it's sort of like free where the ear wanders.
Mm.
And question was if that's something that you intended inside as part of your composition, as part of the way that you want your piece to be perceived.
Yeah, it's free. It's free to perceive. Maybe this recording is from, I think, from Paris, and it was played on the stage. So maybe a different way. But anyway, it's a stereophony, so it changes.
I found also the length of the text that you hear is one very busy text where there's one thing, and then so you can phase out of it slightly, especially when something else comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then that does a similar sort of very busy but kind of static text, and then you do begin to wander. So that was my experience.
Right. Good. Yes.
You were talking about that you're trying to get people interested in music by using various techniques like repetition or by having elements of surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also said that you don't want your music to be entertainment. So I would be
You
interested.
what?
You
Want
don't
to?
want your music to be entertainment. Right? You said that. Or you
Yeah.
said that you have a problem with entertainment because there's enough entertainment in other fields.
Mm-hmm.
Of the contemporary music. So I would be interested in, do you have like what's your understanding of entertainment in that context, and where would you draw the line between what you do, like trying to get people interested, and entertainment?
Yeah. Yes. Entertainment in the meaning of comfortableness, maybe. When it's comfortable, then you don't really think about it. And when it's not comfortable, and then you're irritated, and then you think about something else, or you think about the music, why it's disgusting, or something that remains. In that sense, I say entertainment, because entertainment is something to enjoy, something to give only good consolations, maybe. Yes, but I want people to enjoy music in a way. So it's complicated. But maybe I used to think more to write something nice, something enjoyable. Maybe my first CD with Kairos, something like that. So it was written in 90s or 2000. So I was my 20s, 30s, and at that time I tried to find something nice, probably. Something light as well, because maybe now a bit less, but at that time, many new music was very serious and very heavy. And I come from the culture that has lightness and like haiku or anything very short and light form to present something more. And so I wanted to create something light and something happy at that time. But I started to think now that it was a bit superficial way to think. So now I'm not afraid of being disgusted or disliked. Yes, it's aging.
So do you want people to enjoy music, or do you want people not to enjoy music, or do you not care if people enjoy it?
Don't know. I don't know. If they don't like my music or if they don't enjoy my music, but if they have thought something, if it's then rejection, it's a pity, I think. So in that way, I want them to like or enjoy my music. But if they enjoy the music and then it's gone, it's a pity as well. But it's maybe better than only the rejection. But I hope my ideal way is, like I said earlier, as Stockhausen's example, to make some shock, to offer some time or occasion to think about something important, but you are so busy that you don't really think about it. I think the concert or even museums, this kind of place and time, occasion is to present this kind of time to think, to stop and think about something very primordial, important, but you forget in your life, busy life. So I think that's the point of this kind of music, maybe. So maybe enough. So thank you very much.